The number 6 San Diego State University versus number 1 UConn. So, those you don't remember, and we'll definitely get into it. This is a finals rematch of the last game of last year. That's why I was like, I don't remember UNC being in this goddamn game. Like, what? So, let's talk about San Diego State. Obviously, not a stranger to the tournament. They found a way to have good play last year, and first round was really no difference. While the game did start off a little bit rough, I will say, against UAB, I did notice a 1-3-1 was kind of giving them issues. They eventually started finding their shots in the corner through penetration and pretty much got Jaden Ledee going. And pretty much he couldn't just be stopped. My man had a balling of a game. Him and Lamont Butler kept driving, like I said, had that front court staggering, had them off their feet, had them in foul trouble, and was able to find those shots in the corner and turn that into a lot of success. Defensively, Butler was also a problem. He had 4 steals. So they were able to close that game out. It was one that they barely won. Like I said, they started off a little rough, but they was able to close that game out, show where their strengths are in their defense. But I do think that they did struggle to stop some shooters, so they are going to have to 100% step that up in the next round, especially because their calling card is defense, and sometimes their offense struggles a little bit, and they become a little stagnant. As I mentioned, they struggle a little bit, become a little stagnant. First game, they didn't shoot the ball that well. Because of that, they shot 27.8%. But second game against Yale, they brought that up to a whopping 48.1. Ledee, my man's unstoppable. He's one of the best players in this tournament right now. Had another great game with 26. Definitely showing that he can show up on the big stage. Last year, he was part of that championship team that made it to the finals, but he was coming off the bench, so he wasn't a main starter or a main contributor. Second game as well, like I said, first game, Lamont Butler did his thing defensively. Second game, Darian Trammell took over both sides of the ball, 18 points, 3 steals. This game was pretty much a lot less closer than the first game against UAB, and Yale was definitely a better team. Beaten from the get-go, they never looked back. Exactly the type of game they need to move on to the next round, pretty much facing their nemesis because of last year and one of the top teams in the country in UConn. UConn, I mean, what can you say, man? They played extremely well against Stetson. I remember looking at that game in the first round and just thinking, like, this is ridiculous. I know some of these games are going to be lopsided in that first round, obviously a 1 seed. But there is no way in hell that they should have put a 91-52 whopping. And it's not just the whopping, but it was the way they did it. Shot the ball well, played smothering defense, and just did it in a huge fashion. All the starters scored in double digits. Donovan Clingan, Cam Spencer, Stefan Castle all showed out with great performances, and they pretty much show why they're kind of defending champions and one of the favorites to repeat. They pretty much only had one job on the other end, one player stop, Stefan Swenson, and they did a good job at controlling him, making his job a little bit more difficult, making his shots more harder, and definitely were able to pretty much coast through that first game almost as if they weren't even trying. That's what I'm saying. Everyone scored double digits in the starting lineup. Obviously, a couple people stuck out, but it was just I don't want to say easy game, but it pretty much was an easy game. Next game versus Northwestern. That game was crazy. I remember coming off the rip, I'm like, the boy Klingon is trying to make Klingon. I'm gonna call him Klingon. The boy Klingon is trying to make a stamp. 14 points, 14 rebounds, 8 blocks. A couple of them came right off the jump when the game started. He was just showing out. Really a force to handle on the block. A great defensive masterpiece, and obviously a great overall game. Alex Caravan had a tough show in the first half. Also, not necessarily a no-show, but someone I was expecting a little bit more from the first game. But that's why you got a team like UConn. He was able to lean on other players like Spencer, Tristan Newton, pretty much pick up the slack and they were still able to kind of roll through that game and ease into the Sweet 16. So let's get into it. We're about to get into the rematch for last year's final. So sorry about my throat. Like I said, for those of you who don't remember, this is a rematch of last year's championship game. UConn beat San Diego State 76-59. And obviously San Diego State is definitely looking for revenge. And obviously it's only fitting that they have to face UConn in a chance to get through the tournament. Not necessarily in the last game, but I love the fact that they face off within Sweet 16 before they get to deep in the tournament. So like I mentioned, San Diego's calling card is their defense. That's what got them through the whole tournament last year. That's what got them to obviously get a good ranking this year, first couple games. And they're gonna have their work cut out for them. They're gonna have to find a way to slow down Klingon. He's already averaging a double and at least 4 blocks a game at this point. Obviously looking over to take over on defense as well. And they also will have to find a way to do it without fouling. One thing I remember specifically from last year's game is in the final, they were able to hit, UConn was able to hit 24 out of 27 free throws. 27 free throws taken is crazy. They have to find a way to defend, but they have to find a way to do it physically, aggressively, but without fouling. Part of that was, like I said, Newton still on the same team, or still returning to the team from UConn. He hit 8 for 8 from free throws, so give him a chance to get going, get downhill. He's definitely someone that you don't want at the free throw line. The D, like I said, one of the best players in this tournament so far. He was coming off the bench last year. In that final game, he did contribute coming off the bench. He was actually one of the only ones that helped contribute to try to cut into that lead. So now that he's their leading scorer, pretty much their best player, averaging 29 points so far in this tournament. He already had a 30-point game. Pretty much he's going to be the one that's looking out for revenge, making sure that his team is starting this game off on the right path, making sure that they do what they got to do. On the other end, UConn is UConn. They're UConn for a reason. They're defending champs for a reason. They're favorites, one of them, for a reason. They're prolific at moving the ball, prolific at defending, prolific at shooting. When they're hitting on all cylinders, they're one of the very toughest teams to beat. I know they know what type of game they're getting into with San Diego. They know it's going to be physical. They know it's going to be rough. They know it's going to be tough. They know it's going to be gritty. And they know what type of team is waiting for them. So the question is how they're going to answer. Like I said, Caravan, I want a little more from him. And one of the reasons why is because him and Newton are some of the only returning starters from last year's championship team. So I want to see Newton get involved, look to drive, look to try to get free throws. He's averaging 10 and 4, so you're definitely going to see him try to create for himself, and definitely look for Caravan to get a little bit more. I definitely want to see him get into double digits this game. I think it was Caravan last year who had 5 points in his game. So even though they won, I definitely think we do need to see a little bit more from him. But clearly the story of this game, and I could go on for this game for so long, so I'm going to try to wrap it up right here because this is a good game. Like I said, championship game last year. Klingon versus LaD. Matchup to see. I cannot wait till the game to see it. Both like to work in the block. Both like to get in work down low. Both are going to get scoring. And I definitely do think, even though obviously they're zoned in college defense, I definitely think they're going to get chances to actually see each other one-on-one per se. So I definitely think that both of them already showcase their skills so far in this tournament. Different sides of the ball, though. LaD's been a prolific scoring threat, while Klingon's been an absolute force to deal with on defense. Both of them are good down low, so I definitely can't wait to see what those two give each other and what they give us, basically. I do think UConn has all the right pieces to repeat. Not saying they will, but honestly, with additions like Klingon, who could play both ways and players like Spencer who will find a way to be useful anywhere he can. It's like he's somehow always getting like a 9-4-4, like a 11-3-6. Like he's just always involved, rebounding, passing, things like that. I think once again they are going to be too much to handle. San Diego State, a little too inconsistent for me when it comes to shooting and just scoring in general. Besides the D, no one else has really shown that they can kind of step up and take over, or not even take over, but just kind of allow yourself to be in that stage when it comes to that big moment. Players like Tremont Butler are returns from last year and definitely have to step it up on both ends. I mentioned in the beginning how both of them had good defensive games individually already so far. Both of them will definitely have to have good defensive games if they want to bring their best against UConn. But like I said, all the right pieces. Pretty much UConn got everything they need. I do believe that they once again will be too much, and I do believe that UConn advances and move on to the Elite Eight.